Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Do a second, like,
Yeah.
well, I'm just saying, like, I'm getting the shot here, but
Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
hi there. Can you hear us all right?
Yes.
Hi. Well,
Go ahead.
Hey there. So my name is Jacob, and
My name is Brian.
we're going to be arguing for the negative today. Are y'all ready to begin?
yeah, thanks a lot there, Jacob. This is our team. We have Prerna. She's new with us. Parmandeep and Philip, you've already met. So yeah, we have the resolution. Basically, Sisler will be defending the resolution that religious symbols will be prohibited for wearage by government employees in public offices. Since we're defending the resolution, if you mind, we'll take the floor first and then give it over to you.
Sounds good.
Okay, so Prerna will be our first speaker.
So religious symbols, jewelry, and clothing are as old as religion and civilized humanity itself. Moreover, organized religion has acted as an agent of moral uniformity and the adoption of values for millennia. Religious symbols, jewelry, clothing, and iconography are conspicuous and intentional signs when worn by an individual that he or she is an adherent to a particular organized faith and consequently its moral codes and values. Now, one could argue that under societal pressure, an individual might feel compelled to take on the symbols of religion adherence without inwardly accepting its precepts. Nevertheless, the outward symbols of loyalty to that organized faith do their work of informing all who see that individual that he or she is an adherent to the faith of which those symbols indicate.
Just pause for a second, Prerna. Can you guys hear us okay? Did you miss any of that, or? You good? Okay, continue, Prerna. Go ahead.
For example, a cross for Christianity, a kirpan for a Sikh, a turban for a Muslim, or a bindi for a Hindu. Moreover, because most major faiths demand adherence to their moral precepts and values from their followers in all aspects of life, any individual wearing a symbol that indicates their belonging to that group informs all who see him or her that they hold these values as their guiding principles in life, for how they conduct themselves and how they regard ethical and moral situations. For example, the wearing of the cross gives off notions of loyalty because it is used to symbolize the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and its wearing shows that they adhere to the teachings of the Bible. A niqab would follow the teachings of Muhammad, a yarmulke the teachings of Abraham. One might say that these symbols may be worn as a fashion statement, and the wearer does not mean to advertise the belief of that religion. However, they create a perception of loyalty to that faith and are therefore inappropriate to the office of government. We believe the government must serve its people in a non-biased, fair, and equitable manner. Moreover, the government must be seen to be fair and give no special preference to religion or allow religion to influence its proceedings. The main reason for this is the nature of Canada's multicultural makeup. In fact, non-religious citizens make up almost a quarter of our population, 23.5% to be exact. Therefore, it is critical to the proper functioning of our government that religion be kept separate from it. The presence of religious symbols in our government buildings, particularly in the clothing of its employees, therefore runs contrary to this ideal. As we said earlier, if religious symbols represent, and at the least, create the perception of adherence to a religious faith, then they have no place in government, as that religious faith may have values that differ from the government of Canada. Imagine how contrary the message to our citizens would be if we tell them on the one hand that the Canadian government represents all of its citizens equally, with no preference for any particular belief system, but then on the other, we allow its employees, while on the job, to wear conspicuous symbols that indicate a high loyalty to religious values that may not be shared by the citizens they serve or the government they elected. It may be seen at this point that we are violating freedom of religion, but we are not. We are only restricting the expression of religion by government representatives, and our Constitution allows this restriction because of the notwithstanding clause. In Canada, we live in a wonderfully free and permissive democracy. Our Charter of Rights and Freedoms enshrines every Canadian individual freedom to move, be educated, vote, marry whomever they choose, state controversial ideas in the media, and a whole host of other important freedoms that very much resemble the UN Charter of Rights and Freedoms, including the freedom to practice any religion of their choose, so long as its practices are not in violation of the Criminal Code of Canada. However, within its Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Canada has a section entitled the Notwithstanding Clause, which allows a government, if it has the support of its legislature, to override any of these individual freedoms in the interest of democracy. The override can only last 5 years, at which time an election must be held. Government represents a secular society and makes decisions which it deems fit for the majority of the population. By wearing religious symbols, government is not seen as secular. Instead, it can be seen as having a bias or preference of one religion over another, and some religious garb, such as a burqa, for instance, which is an outer garment that covers a woman's full body except for the eyes, can be seen as a sign of gender oppression, and this goes against Canada's beliefs and values of gender equality among men and women. The reason that this can be seen as oppressive is because nowhere in the Islamic law does it outright state that a woman must wear full body garb. However, it does say that women should be modest. Of course, there will be some women who want to engage in the full covering of their body, and in Canada's Constitution, it is their fundamental freedom to follow the religion, belief, or expression of their choice. We are not denying their right to do so. However, we are limiting this right if they choose to work for the Canadian government, and it is being done by the part of our Constitution that allows for there to be a limit of suspension of the in a part of our Constitution that allows this, the notwithstanding clause. We are suggesting that the Canadian government could limit freedom of religion with this clause by prohibiting government employees from wearing religious symbols at work. Another point that must be considered closely with this topic is workplace safety and religious garments. Most religions require that one wears a particular garment at all times, such as a burqa for Muslim women or a turban for Sikh men. Due to these religious requirements, many conflicts between religion and workplace safety arise. In Canada, the Occupational Health and Safety Regulation designates that safety headgear must be worn by a worker in any work area where there is a danger of head injury from falling, flying, or throwing objects or other harmful contact. This means that any worker in any workplace is required to wear a hard hat that is when it is necessary. As one can imagine, a problem arises with turbans due to this law. Several cases have popped up in Canada where a worker refused to abide by hard hat laws due to a turban. In Binder versus Canadian National Railway Company, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that a policy making hard hats mandatory could be upheld. The Government of Canada has many jobs that require its workers to wear turbans or helmets in order to proceed with the job safely. For example, a job that is a heavy-duty mechanic requires that the worker, an employee of the Government of Canada, must wear a hard hat. Another garment that creates lots of controversy when it comes to safety is the burqa, traditionally worn by Muslim women. The burqa is normally a one-part headpiece that entirely covers the face of a woman, normally leaving a mesh to see through. According to a survey conducted by a QMI agency, 54% of Canadians believe that burqas should be banned in public, including the government. Other countries such as France and Belgium have already banned the full-body veil from being worn in public. Government employees need to be visible to the public, and a burqa creates a barrier between the public and government employees. For instance, voters have a right to see the face of the woman that they have elected to government. The person that they have chosen to represent them should be visible. In both cases of the turban and the burqa, it is in the interest of the public to ban the wearing of religious garment and symbols in government. seeing as they cause harm to both individuals and society. To conclude, and to be clear, we are not denying people their rights to practice their religion, but we are limiting this right if they choose to work for the Canadian government.
I'll hand over the floor to Dale Valle then at this time.
Maybe ask you a few questions first.
You good, Valle? Yeah.
All right. So first on, you just cited the court case about the Canadian government and it not requiring everyone to wear hard hats and things of that nature. But doesn't that not correlate with the issue here, because you're forcing government to take away clothes from people, such as religious affiliated clothes, as opposed to not letting them wear whatever they want?
So the court case was Binder versus the Canadian National Railway, and in that case, the Supreme Court of Canada upheld the law that states that everyone must wear a hard hat, and because the individual chose not to wear a hard hat, he could be fired or not employed by the Canadian National Railway because he could not wear a hard hat. And what this means is that the law states that anybody and everybody in any workplace needs to wear a hard hat if it is necessary. So jobs such as a heavy-duty mechanic for the government of Canada, which is a job under the Canadian government, needs a hard hat. So if a person wanted to wear a turban, they would not be able to work for the government of Canada in that way. And if he wanted to, he would have to take off his turban. And it only makes sense that if he were having to take off his turban, that everyone would have to take off their religious symbols on the basis of equality in Canada.
Right, but in that case, it wasn't for a religious reason, correct? It was for an individual reason with a hard hat issue. Didn't have any religious ties.
Turban has a religious tie for Sikhs and Muslim.
Okay. So on my second question, your first speaker also cited how under Islamic law, there's no forcation for women to have to wear necessarily or to cover themselves and, sorry about that, for a particular clothing. But as I believe, as I recall here, in Sharia law, it is required for, excuse us for a second. Sorry about that. We had an announcement going on. But as I was saying, under Sharia law, it is guaranteed, I'm sorry, not guaranteed, but is forced for women to have to cover themselves and shroud themselves. Not just a modesty, but it is required under Sharia law for women to have to wear certain types of clothing. So would have to disagree with you have to disagree with your own claim, correct, about under Islamic law not stating that?
Go ahead.
Actually, it does not state anywhere in their Islamic law that the women have to wear a burqa. This is something that has been. It states that women need to be modest, but it doesn't outright state that women have to wear. That women have to wear.
Just keep going.
That women have to wear a burqa or something that covers their body completely. It's something that men have sort of twisted into it so that they can have power over the women. So it's seen as a form of oppression.
So are you disagreeing with the current Sharia law?
I'm not disagreeing. In the Quran, it says that women should be modest, right? It does not say, though, that women should cover their full body when they go out in public. This is that part about wearing a burqa in public and covering yourself. That is sort of a twisted version of what the Quran is saying. Does that make sense?
Yes. So my final question for you before I get into my speech was about You said the Canadian government has an interest in not respecting any particular religion. However, if you're allowing everyone the right to religious freedom to wear what they so please, regardless of his religious affiliation, isn't that not having the government respect their religion because they're allowing everyone to practice their own religion?
Yeah, we're not saying that government officials can't practice religion or anything. We're just saying that in the public sphere, while they are in office or while they are working for the government, where they are visible to the public, they cannot portray any religious symbols that could give the image that they have loyalties to other causes.
Right, but are you saying that clothes establish a religion necessarily? Because there's plenty of people who could wear things that are of another religion. They could be of not necessarily that religion.
If clothes don't establish religion, then we shouldn't need those symbols there because they don't have any significance afterwards.
Not necessarily, there's still your right to choose whatever clothes you want to wear, right? That's like saying any clothes don't have significance, which isn't true, right? To any person who's practicing under a certain religion, don't you want to be able to practice your religion?
But just because that's okay, if you're going through that in that path, what if I want to wear a Nazi symbol? I mean, why can't I wear that then?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that?
What if I want to wear a Nazi symbol then?
A Nazi symbol? That doesn't have a,
That's my
passion. But that's not of a particular religious affiliation. That's different.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
We're saying that government officials should not be allowed any religious symbols. There would be a set amount of symbols that would be...
Okay, but I'm just saying the Nazi example is different because that's not for a particular religious instance. It's something completely different. If we're talking about religious freedom here, then no, it doesn't guarantee you the right to wear a Nazi symbol. That's off basis of what we're arguing.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just saying that you cannot wear in the public sphere a religious symbol. You can practice it at home. You can wear a burqa at home as long as you're not in the public eye, because you in the public sphere are saying that you're giving a certain loyalty. If I was an MP or someone that was elected to government, my loyalty lies to my constituents and only my constituents. When I'm making a decision on abortion, I should be thinking about what my constituents want, not what my religion tells me to.
Right, but in the United States, for example, when you're sworn into office for a government position or for the presidency, for example, many presidents choose to swear in on the Bible, but that's not necessarily giving way to the religious affiliation to the Christian faith. They're just solid principles that are on tradition. So wouldn't you agree to not allowing persons to engage in wearing their clothes that are religiously affiliated? It breaks away on their traditions of foundations of life. Because for some people, without going to worship services, wearing religious clothes is the only other way to practice their religion. So how can you take that away from people?
We want to make a secular government where nothing religious would be allowed, because that doesn't portray what constituents think. You cannot wear a cross and if half of your constituents are Muslim, because you are not representing your constituents. And since you can't equally represent your constituents, you, in all rights of fairness and equal, you have to get rid of all the religious symbols that you have in government.
Thank you. I'll now move forth into our argument. We negate the resolution, be it resolved, while working at their place of employment, government employees must maintain religious neutrality. Therefore, government employees while working at their place of employment may not wear any objects such as headgear, clothing, jewelry, or other adornments that by their design and appearance and nature indicate a religious affiliation. We have determined that the proposition today has based our claims on three logical fallacies. First, they're trying to speak for others. This is radically viewpoint discrimination and should be avoided at all costs. John Sharp Williams, a biographer of President Thomas Jefferson, offered this quote attributed to the former president. A reading of history convinces me that most bad government has grown out of too much government. The standard the proposition team is supporting is clearly a great example of bad government. Would also like to cross out a word to President Gerald R. Ford. A government that is large enough to promise you everything is also large enough to take everything away. Please excuse us for a second. Again, sorry for the interruption. So today, the proposition is attacking the immigrants and their religion, but tomorrow, who will they be attacking? Second, they're trying to somehow make a wrong idea through a bandwagon approach. Come on, everyone is doing this. To turn this logical fallacy, I would like to quote a short poem by Reverend Niemeyer. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Third, making a slippery slope viewpoint discrimination argument that somehow, just because a person wears something different, they're somehow not as Canadian or not as good as another person. This is then further made worse with religious exemptions for some groups. You're not going to make a law for some, and not a law that applies to all. America has made many mistakes in this area, and we wish that our neighbors from the north would learn from our mistakes in this area. Going forward, to quote most prominently from our opponents and saying they would like a secular government, do we really want a secular society? Because that is not what any jurisprudence will want for its citizens. The mistakes of Americans. First, the anti-Catholic laws of the 1840s. In the height of the potato famine and mass migration of Irish to the United States, many cities in the U.S. passed local ordinances outlawing Catholics and making it difficult for Catholics to get a job. Signs appeared everywhere. Catholics need not apply. Discrimination was rampant, and political parties developed to try to stop this immigration. The Know Nothing Party, for example, was based prominently on just nativism and anti-immigrants. Second, the China's Exclusion Act of 1882. Even though the United States has less than 0.02 population of Chinese immigrants, the U.S. Congress in 1882 passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. The statute of 1882 suspended Chinese immigration for 10 years and declared the Chinese as ineligible for naturalization. Chinese workers already in the country challenged the constitutionality of the discriminatory acts, but their efforts failed. The act was renewed in 1892 for another 10 years, and in 1902, Chinese immigration was made permanently illegal. Third, the Reynolds case of 1878. Here, George C. Reynolds sued the United States to ensure that his religious beliefs of having more than one wife could be upheld. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld the following religious beliefs are not supposed to be governed. Government reaches actions, not opinions. Our government is not here to make opinions of certain religions or all religions. Men are allowed to have their own beliefs and faith. That is what belongs to the church. However, government has to take action when these beliefs and principles break the rules. If one's religion makes them act against peace and good order, then the government comes in and makes two laws and regulations. The American people agreed to let the legislature make laws about religion. This was the beginning of separation of church and state. The government cannot make laws regarding religion, but can reach action with the principles or violation of social duties or subversive of good order. If the government would allow religious practices to be exempt from rules and regulations, would mean the man could govern for himself. Ending could be considered a religious practice. The faulty logic allowed government to subvert the will of the people and letter of the law to any group it deems necessary. That is not the right and blatantly against the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which guarantees that everyone is treated equally by the law. Fourth, Korematsu versus United States, 1944, a landmark United States Supreme Court case concerning the constitutionality of Executive Order 9066, which ordered Japanese Americans into internment camps during World War II, regardless of citizenship. Here in the U.S. Supreme Court ruled the government had the right to take away other citizens' rights simply because of their national origin. This is a blatant viewpoint and constant discrimination has no place in any modern society. Therefore, we the negative purpose that the proposition will create more problems. You cannot express equality in society and treat different groups differently, which is just the following plan. First, treat all people equally, allow them the ability to wear what they want, not make laws limiting their freedom of expression, which is guaranteed in the First Amendment. And second, don't look to government to save us from ourselves. President Reagan said it best, government's first duty is to protect the people, not run their lives. We'd like to remember these immortal words of President Reagan when he said, the most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The only help we need today is to get the government out of our closed section and allow us to get on with our lives. Vote con. Thank you for your time. I know I'm putting myself up to questions.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, so the first thing I noticed about your argument was that it was based on the government fighting, or stuff fighting in quotes, again with the public. We are only saying that the government must be neutral in religion, the citizens may do whatever they wish to do in their private life. If they want to be affiliated with religion, they have the right to do so. If they want to wear the garments, they can do so. We only want the government to be secular so that the citizens do not have a perceived image of bias of the government. And the second point you talked about was one of the points talked about was that the government must protect their people. Also, you talked about the government wanting to protect their people. But how can the government protect their people if they do not represent the people? Now, to represent all the people equally, the government must be neutral so that it can be done so. Because there is no way that the government can maintain an equal representation of all the beliefs and of all the combinations of every religion if they choose to follow the sacred path. So symbols represents the values a person believes in, displaying that they adhere to the teachings of their respective messiahs, and therefore the government must be secular because they do not want their citizens to perceive them as biased towards them. And our constitution allows this restriction about government employees not being affiliated with a religion through the notwithstanding clause. I'm done. That's all I have.
That's your rebuttal?
Yep.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but were those questions exactly against our case, or?
They were just, my second speech was just basically a rebuttal of.
Sorry, that was Parmandeep's rebuttal. So if you guys have if you have your second speaker, feel free to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great.
Hello, my name is Danielle Thompson. I wasn't here earlier when they introduced everyone else. But how are you guys doing today?
Great.
You're good.
Thanks.
All right, I will begin my second speech. You guys don't mind. Please cross-apply all my partner's first speech and note that they never did really attack our arguments, so they must have agreed to them. So flow that to our side. We will also begin to attack the fallacy that clothes somehow establish harm to someone else. For this to be the case, the proposition team today would have to have shown that clothes bring a harm to others. They might never. This burden today, and since that was never met, there's no way they can win this round today. President Clinton in 1997 said, "My great hope is that we can enter this new century and this new millennium as the most successful, multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-religious democracy the world has ever known. We will get there through efforts like this. Men, women, folks from all walks of life coming together to respect and celebrate our differences while uniting around the ideals that bind us together, more importantly, as one America. Freedom of religion takes many forms in the workplace. For example, Sikhs may feel a religious obligation to wear a turban at work. Male Muslims may wish to wear a beard. Weekends may want to work on a Christian holiday in exchange for having one of their Sabbaths off work. A Jew might want to leave work early on a Friday night to attend religious services in exchange for working overtime early in the week. A Christian employed on a rotating shifts might wish to have every Sunday off work. As in most cases of civil rights, conflicts sometimes arise between an employee's right to practice their religion and an employer's right to conduct his or her business as they wish, and not to be burdened by excess costs due to their employees' religious needs. But there should never be the case where the government denies rights of some for the rights of others. This causes the government to play favorites and actually establishes religion itself. Here in the U.S., we have passed laws to ensure that what in Canada will not happen here. And if it does, there is a legal remedy for such an action. In 1972, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was modified to require all medium and large companies to accommodate the religious needs of their employees, except in those cases where the cost would be prohibitive. Companies with 15 or fewer employees are exempted from the law. In 1995 and 1996, bills covering freedom of religion in the workplace were introduced to Congress. No action was taken, mostly because of time constraints. In 1977, the U.S. Supreme Court interpreted the clause of the Civil Rights Act referring to the workplace religion freedom. They gutted the law, allowed widespread employer exemption, even in cases involving relatively minuscule costs or difficulty to the employer. In 1997, in July, Senator John Kerry, Democrat of Massachusetts, and Dan Coates, a Republican in Indiana, introduced a bill called the Workplace Religious Freedom Act of 1997. A House of version was introduced, House of Representatives, by Republican Goodling. This would require employers to accommodate their employees' religious practices unless there was a significant difficulty or expense involved. The bill failed to be passed. In 1997, in August, the Clinton administration Office of Personnel Management issued guidelines which overall civilian branch employees of the federal government. The guidelines were prepared by a wide-ranging coalition of groups, including such diverse organizations as the People for an American Way, the Southern Baptist Convention, and the Christian Coalition. The guidelines clarify that 1. Federal employees may engage in personal religious expression to the greatest extent possible, consistent with workplace efficiency and the requirements of law. 2. Federal employers may not discriminate in employment on the basis of religion. And 3. All government agencies must reasonably accommodate employees' religious practices. President Clinton sent a memorandum on the guidelines to the heads of federal departments and agencies. He commented that the principles in the guidelines are all but variants or applications of a single rule of neutrality and fairness, that agencies shall treat employees with the same respect and consideration, regardless of their religious beliefs, whether by allowing religious speech, preventing religious coercion or harassment, or making accommodations to religious practice. The federal government must act to ensure that the federal workplace is generous to the followers of all religions, as well as to the followers of none. The Department of Treasury published excerpts from the guidelines with numerous examples of their application. These are modest and really simply crafted ideas that make the world a much better place to live. We live in a diverse country. We cannot any longer discriminate against a group of people because of their dress. When we deny the rights of one, we deny the rights of all. And that concludes the second speech. Thank you. Open for questions.
Okay, at this time we're gonna have our third speaker speak. They have no questions, so let's move into the third speaker.
Yeah, hi, my name is Philip. All right, so first of all, your first point was that we didn't attack any of your positions, but that's not true. We attacked all of them at once. They were all to do with how government limited the public's rights or Japanese or Chinese people's rights with religion, and we're not arguing about that. That's completely irrelevant. We're not trying to limit the public's right way of wearing the religious symbols or anything like that. It's totally a different tangent. What your point about Mr. Bill Clinton and how he wanted to make the world more multiculturalistic, our government, even if it were secular, would definitely promote multiculturalism because it's a part of our Canadian identity, and it's something that our government always strongly upholds. Just because you can't wear or you don't wear a religious symbol doesn't mean you can't support religions or support multiculturalism. We're also not attacking the right to take away holidays or days of. If you want to switch a day off for a religious reason, it's perfectly fine. It's a private matter, not something public. We're only attacking religious symbols. If also there was another point that federal employees cannot discriminate against religion. If you are not wearing a religious symbol or a religious garment at the time when you are meeting to get hired, it's almost impossible to discriminate against your religion because you are not giving out any outward signs that you are a part of religion. Do you agree with that? That if you don't have anything on that shows that you belong to a certain religion, you can't be discriminated against that religion? Next of all, you said that we're making the world a better place. This is more like an appeal to emotion. Really, we are trying to make the world a better place. Both sides are trying to make the world a place. We just have different ways of thinking about it. But the government should be unbiased. It should have its ties, ideally, to just constituents and what their voters want them to do. Religious symbols give out the impression that you are tied to another figurehead, or your loyalties lie somewhere else. I've used the example, if you are voting for abortion, your vote should be only based on what your voters and what your constituents want you to do, not what the Bible or the Quran or any other religious book says. Other than that, I don't have many more. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask.
We have no questions. I will move to my third speech. Okay, to begin, their proposition in which they don't want any officials or any real display of religious symbols is absurd and cannot truly be defined, and is absurdly subjective. As one, you cannot you would have to look at someone within a turban and then question whether they're wearing it for stylish reasons or because it's a part of their faith. In addition, beards, for example, also carry religious connotations, and of course would be rather subjective and unfair to be targeted against surely for having facial hair. In addition, I would like to refute the third speaker's arguments in which they said that, or try to refute that they did not attack our arguments. However, there were arguments that were left untouched, such as our fallacy arguments, in which we stated that they used the speaking for others fallacy, the slippery slope fallacy, as well as the bandwagon fallacy. So extend that point. In addition, there is an internal contradiction within their secular argument, as one, they want to have all people represented. However, how can you represent all people if you do not have people with religious ties to,
Yep. There is no way that the government can accurately represent all people. Yes, it may be able to represent some large minorities, but no way they can ever represent all the types of religions and everybody.
Do you agree with that?
You would have to rephrase your question.
Do you agree that the government cannot represent equally every single religion that there is in the country?
We do not agree with that. There must be an effort made. If you must agree with that argument as well, if you want to have said secular government.
Especially since having no religion isn't necessarily the answer to that whatsoever, because then you're representing that if the government displays hostility towards religion, which is a message you're sending to people, which is compromising their own right to religious freedom.
We're not not being hostile to religion at all. We're saying that there is no way that we can portray every religion in the world, large, small, or in the middle, in our government. And the only equal way to show that is by having nothing. And that's the only equal way, only solution. Because we cannot seem to favor a particular religion.
Yes, but people, the constituents don't elect representatives for their government because they're going to be just like them, or because they're going to have the same race as them or the same religion as them. They elect them because they're going to protect their rights. So then how are you going to have people or government officials that don't do that?
Yeah, but if let's say the official is Christian, they would not elect that official because let's say they're in favor of abortion.
On contrary to what you said, I think you elect a person because you share the same ideals and you share the same platform on what you want done in government.
Well, first, there are Christians that believe in abortion. But second, if we're going back to the clothes aspect and how people would elect them based on that, just to that, they wouldn't elect officials based upon what they're wearing, religious connotation. That wouldn't make sense as a voter to only vote. That's a very shallow reason to vote for or against someone. Again, you elect people because they're going to protect your rights.
If I may continue with my speech.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Within your second speech, or your second speaker, you offered little to no additional arguments, nor did you defend or extend your previous arguments. All it was were attacks. And finally, within the first speaker, there was heavily circular reasoning in saying that the Quran or the Muslim religion does not have or support women wearing their robes, as all the first speaker said that was the very same thing. There was no textual evidence, there was no historical evidence. It was just reciting the same argument again. For these reasons, we would like you to vote con. Yes.
I said that in the Islamic law, it does not say anywhere outright, like in text, that a woman has to, fully cover herself.
However, that is a generalization of the religion and not going into all sects, as we brought up with Sharia, the Sharia law.
Do you have a quote from the Quran that says that women must wear full body robes?
We don't need a quote, as it is known Sharia law.
No, but it is not in their religious book, the religious law, that you have to wear. It has been interpreted by men to oppress women, and it's something that another argument that you guys did not rebut, along with workplace safety, is that certain religious symbols oppress women, and as a government, we can't support oppression of any race or gender, on any race or gender or age or anything like that. And as a government, we have to remain totally secular in that sense.
But by saying that, isn't it hypocritical to say that you can't oppress women? However, you're repressing religion as a whole, and not only oppressing women, but you're also oppressing men from following their beliefs.
No, we did not. We only stated that it should be the government that should stay secular.
But you're still oppressing them.
Exactly, and people make up the government, so then how do you support that argument?
Only in their public life, while they're in office or in a government building working there, they cannot portray any religious symbols. At home or even at the shopping mall or wherever they are, as long as they're not on government duty or in a government workplace, if they are a private citizen or if they are doing their duties as a private citizen, they can wear or portray any symbols as much as they want.
That's a middle ground logical fallacy, though. You're saying that, okay, we're just going to discriminate against these persons some of the time, and it's going to be okay. That doesn't work. It doesn't work for any time in U.S. history where you've allowed some discrimination, that it's going to be okay for all times. That's exactly what the civil rights movement was about. And officially now, what you're saying is that if any person in Canada, for example, wants to grow up grow up and work in government someday, if they're holding ties to a particular religion, they have to give that up for that position. And that's not a trade-off that any government would want to take place. Wouldn't you agree?
And even then, who defines what religious affiliation is?
Or what a government official is, for that matter.
The thing is, they would have to detach from their religious views for 8 hours a day, and the rest of the time they could, they actually, like, what I'm trying to say is, under the notwithstanding clause that we have in Canada, if a certain law or a right can be overturned to better serve democracy, it is possible. And this better serves democracy. It eliminates bias from government and eliminates the perception that their loyalties lie somewhere else. And under the notwithstanding clause, which has been used in Canada a couple of times, it is possible. And
Right, but going to the Nazi example that your partner brought up a while ago, if Jews were only in concentration camps for 8 hours a day, would that have made it okay? Certainly not. So you can't just allow.
And it was you guys who said that it was not affiliated with this topic. So let's not go back to that. And
Well, no, because
You're the one who brought it up.
exactly, and
You have to defend your argument.
and the Jewish
You
faith
guys
is.
against it, and we already been through that point. So we're not.
Well, no, but if we're talking about the Jewish faith, that does have religious ties, and that's real of a religious connotation. So that's different. Wouldn't you agree?
I don't see where this point is, how is this relevant to our
Because they were discriminating against, for example, religion being of the Jewish faith, and
Yes, that's a public sector. We're only talking about the government being secular.
you just talked about how they would be reflecting themselves to the public sector. So how does that correlate? You're taking out your own argument here.
You phrase our question that.
Well, you said that had to do with the public sector, but you also just said about how the government officials there are reflecting themselves to the public sector. So what's your argument here? Why you can't have it both ways, right?
Would you agree that if I wear a cross, it portrays that I am of Christian faith?
Well, you're not a government official.
And even then, it could portray a symbol of death.
Okay, let's say I'm an MP and I'm wearing this cross. Does that say that I'm a Christian?
I'm sorry, can you reiterate that, please?
If I'm an MP and I'm wearing a cross, does that say that I'm an MP? Does that give you the image that I'm a Christian? That I believe?
If I'm ignorant, I don't know what that is, then no.
Well, if you're ignorant, then you wouldn't be voting, most likely.
So you're saying ignorant people can't vote?
No, this is
That's not
nothing to
related
do.
to the topic. We're not going to that point.
My question was, please answer the question, yes or no. If I'm wearing a cross, does that give the image that I believe in God or I'm of the Christian faith?
It's
Maybe
subjective.
it's very subjective.
What is it? Does not mean
Because
whether.
some people don't know what the cross is, for example, or what it might represent. And you could be wearing that cross for, as my partner already said, to represent death, for example.
Yes or no question.
Yes, we're not talking about ignorance.
If you knew what a cross meant and what it symbolized, and whether I believe in it or not, whether I'm wearing it as a fashion statement or not, and I'm wearing it, would there be a thing in your mind that said, this man might believe in God?
Well, to me, yes, because you presuppose the question that way. But to another person, perhaps not. But then again, what if you're wearing it on Halloween, for example? Anyone could take that in any kind of way. Does that make you just a Christian for a night, or what's going on here?
You just said you agree that it gives off the image that I am a Christian. It
Yeah,
does.
because you presuppose the question in that way to me, telling me that you're having of the Christian background. But to any other person, perhaps not, who might not know you.
So since you saw this cross, you judged me, right? Yes or no?
You told him to.
No, I didn't judge you. You just told me to interpret, so I just answered your question in the way you wanted it to be answered. But no, I didn't judge you.
Well, yes, you must have judged me because you must have thought, you answered yes. You said that, yes, this man could believe in God, and that is judging, is it not?
Well, the reason I didn't judge you is because I believe in God, and I'm a Christian, so I have no reason to judge you. In fact, I would support your claims. So no, I didn't judge you at all.
I'm not saying this in a negative connotation, but
I'm not saying a negative connotation either. I'm just saying if you ask me whether or not I was judging you, no. If anything, I was supporting you.
So the fact is, you said that you agreed that I gave off the image that I was a Christian, and as a Christian, this means that.
So is it believing in God or is it a Christian? Because those are two different things. Because believing in God, that could be many types of religions, but now you're saying it's Christian?
We're going to debate what the difference between God and religion.
Well, you asked the question, so I'm just.
The question.
There are several gods.
Exactly.
So
We're not talking about that point. We're talking about the government being.
I mean, if we turn the cross upside down, then it's for the KKK, right? Am I right on that? So, I mean, there's different types of.
Okay, I'll try to change this up a little bit so we can all understand here. My friend here is wearing a turban. Do you think, is there something that it says in your head, maybe this man believes in, is a Sikh or is a Muslim? Something goes off in your head and says, maybe yes. Yes or no?
not exactly.
Maybe he has a nice hat on. Exactly. You're in Canada. It's pretty cold there, so I would assume that.
You're pretty much just avoiding our questions. Yes,
Well, no, because the way you're asking it, you presuppose the question.
It's open-ended.
Exactly.
We are allowed to answer in any way we want.
And besides, you're asking if he has a turban, does it have Muslim ties? That's presupposing. You're asking me to interpret that as Muslim faith.
Questions are not very open-ended, I assume, but whatever.
So if you're asking me a yes or a no question, how can I answer no and you did not take that answer as the answer that you want? If you're asking me a yes or no question.
All right. You can continue with your third speaker.
Yeah, I finished.
But do you have any further questions for us before we conclude the debate?
No, they don't have any further questions. We're good.
Okay. Hey, Andrew, are you guys want to do something next week, or did you want to do something on? You're still doing December the 8th, correct?
Yeah, I gotta promote some interest in that, Mike. I'm still looking to get people to do that. I'll have to get back to you. On that one.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, no, I don't have anybody. I don't have that nailed down quite yet, so I'm gonna have to keep looking.
Okay. Yeah, because that guy's really anxious to make sure that we have somebody. So I gotta, if you're not going to do it, I gotta try to look somebody really quick.
Yeah. No, I will get back to you all. I'm gonna push this week, and I'll email you before the end of the week for sure.
Okay, sounds good. And just let me know if you want to do it again Monday. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, you guys. Yeah, it was. We felt honestly these guys. It was a tough argument for us to support. Really, we weren't necessarily personally invested in the actual resolution. It was interesting. Quebec. Then actually did fall apart. Quebec. The Quebec Charter. Quebec Values Charter actually fell in legislation. I think it supported and got scrapped in the end. So Canada won't actually be. None of our legislative buildings will actually be following this policy anytime soon. So it was purely a theoretical exploration, which is probably a good thing for us. But then it was interesting to see how many countries in Europe are going down that path. So, but yeah, it was really tough because it wasn't this naturally toward our line of thinking. So.
Yeah, it's an odd situation. We're trying to argue this similar in a court case that we're doing, and it's difficult to be on the side where you're trying to support and say you need to do away with some people's rights simply because it's for the benefit of the common good, because that excuse has been used so often that a lot of times people, it's kind of like the boy cried wolf.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was basically our burden of success was make limiting individual liberty a good thing. So
yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we're trying to do that in something else, and we're having a dickens of a time too. That's what we're fixing to try to do. So we really appreciate that level of understanding a little bit more. And I had about 8 or 9 other people watching, so we really did appreciate that too.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for coming out. I will. I don't know if you guys are. I'll put it out to my team, see if we want to do something next week. And we probably couldn't. I don't know if we could do Monday because we got to do the Remembrance Day. Well, actually, yeah, you guys have a different Memorial Day, I think, for military remembrance or whatever.
Yeah.
Do you do November 11th? I can't recall. Is it?
We do 11th as well, but I think we do November 11th, but it's gotten to where unfortunately it's not as celebrated as much as it should probably be as we reach almost the 100th anniversary of the end of the World War One.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could do it on a Thursday if you wanted to as well. So just let us know if whatever dates could be available, just not Wednesday.
Yeah, no, it's a maybe. Yeah, no, next Monday will be quite busy because, well, all the schools do November 11th on the 10th to recognize it, and then the big ceremony happens the next day. So it's a little bit busy at the beginning of next week. But yeah, I will push that moot court one, and I'm sure somebody will bite. Somebody's interested in aliens in this school. I got 1,000 kids, so.
Yeah, and try to push the alien deal because we get 2 people, and like I said, I got a best-selling author, and it's a lot of fun.
Okay, right on. I will look to it, Mike. No problem. Thanks for meeting us today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leave the meeting. Okay.
Until next time.